Welcome back, Flyers Nitty Gritty fans, to Getting Gritty with It with your host, Wolok, my partner in crime, as always, Vasili Gianarakos. Vasili, welcome back to the show. What's going on, bro?
I'm excited to be back, Yariv. There's not as much hockey news really since the last time I was on.
Not really,
But
yeah.
there's still some interesting stuff to get into. So we're gonna have a fun show. For everybody listening, we appreciate the fact that you're continuing to listen to us in the middle of the hockey off season.
For
So
sure.
yeah, it's gonna be a fun one. Let's get into it, Yariv.
Yeah, not too much news to talk about, but if you guys have been listening to us for a while, we always find something to talk about. And Vasily and I will bullshit about hockey relentlessly, regardless if there's something to talk about or not. But before we get started, let me do our usual spiel and then we'll get into the topics. So just want to remind everybody listening, please like and subscribe, hit the notification bell for notifications, get notified when we release these episodes. And for the audio version, go to Spotify and iTunes, give us a rating and a follow as well. That is the best way to support the show. So if you have not done that so far, please do so now. We truly, truly appreciate it. And our show's grown, so we really appreciate those of you who have done that stuff. Could use a little more ratings on the audio versions, just a heads up. So if you haven't done that, please do that. And hopefully it's 5 stars and not a 1 out of 5 or something, which,
Well, really, any rating is fine.
In the very beginning, we got a few troll 1 out of 5s and then got 1 2 out of 5, which, yeah, I can understand because the person was like, there's too many commercials. I'm like, I can't do anything about the commercials. But, you know, thank you for the rating anyway. Also, for our sponsors, Jim Steaks at 4th and South, make sure to check out Jim's at 4th and South. They have one of the best, if not the best, cheesesteak in Philadelphia. It is a great time to get Jim's. It's always a great time to get Jim's. Right now, the lines are probably a little smaller than will be in season, so go to Jim Steaks. I'm sure the lines are still pretty long, but go to Jim Steaks, grab yourself a cheesesteak. They are delicious. Also, Summit Public Adjusters, 215-752-0560. Go to them for your insurance adjustment needs. They will help facilitate the process between you and your insurance company and make sure you get the best claim possible. They will help handle all of the headaches that come with dealing with insurance companies and make sure you are well taken care of. Again, Summit Public Adjusters, 215-752-0560. And also want to give a brief shout out to our partner, SportsSpider.com. Guys, if you're tired of searching multiple websites for sports news, SportsSpider.com has you covered. They collect the latest articles, videos, and podcasts from around the web and organize them by your favorite teams. If you want to stay as up to date on our Philadelphia Flyers or the NHL in general, make sure to check out SportsSpider.com. The link for them is in the description of both the video and the audio versions of this show. Our stuff is always pinned at the top. Again, SportsSpider.com. Okay. Let's get into it, Vasily. So not a lot of news, but 2 pieces of news, one of which is a big piece of news. We'll talk about that stuff. We'll talk a little bit about the Flyers lineup, and then we're going to talk a little bit more about taxes, death by taxes, but we're going to point out something. We're going to put numbers in front of people to make sure people realize how real of an actual issue it is. No matter what Gary Bettman tries to say to make the problem go away, not only is it a problem now, it will be a larger problem in the future, and I will prove that financially. And I haven't been talking about it for years for no reason. Okay, first piece of news. Porter Martone. So Porter Martone was rumored to maybe going to Penn State or Michigan State. He ended up going to Michigan State. Makes sense considering Gavin McKenna ended up signing in Penn State, got a $700K salary with them under the NIL agreement. So that's a big chunk of change. He's going to make a lot more than pretty much every other college NHL player. So with the money that Michigan didn't have to pay, they went out and got themselves Porter Martone, a good conciliatory prize, I would say. And they're a pretty stacked team. We'll go through the roster, but first let's address the elephant in the room. There is definitely a segment of the audience that is panicking. And you probably have heard this on every podcast if you listen to other stuff where they're talking about people are worried what's going on with Cutter Gauthier and they're calling it a failure. I think this is why we have our show, because when people analyze stuff like this and they go, oh, well, this happened this way, so this one's going to happen this way again, I think that was nonsense. First of all, I think the opinion of both of us, I mean, we would have both liked to see him, sign, or I'm sorry, be given a chance to make the team at the start of next year. But just like the Jet Luchanko situation, neither one of us are in the delusion that playing more at a lower level would be bad for him. Both of us would be probably in agreement. I haven't asked you ahead of time, Vasily, but I know the way you think that letting him cook an extra year would only benefit him coming into the NHL. And for all Cutter Gautier's complaints about not making the NHL, he had a pretty damn good rookie season, probably because he was able to cook a little extra and didn't come in at 20 years old or at 19 years old. So Porter Martone is going to start with Michigan. That does mean that he cannot try out for the Flyers. There's a rule where if you're an NCAA player, one, you have to pay your own way through camp. So that means the entire time he would be with the Flyers. So let's say that 2 week segment of, training camp and playing games, he'd have to pay for that out of his own pocket, for the hotel, for all this stuff.
Uh, yeah.
Yeah, so I don't think that's likely. I think for sure, the Flyers will look to get him signed as soon as the NCAA season ends, and then he's going to come in at 19, turning 20, which is really an ideal time in a season that we've been talking about for quite a while, where the team is really looking to take a step forward. It benefited Matvei Michkov as well to come in a year later, where he had a pretty dominant rookie season, maybe the best in modern history for the Flyers. Um, yeah, let me let you talk, Vasily, and then we'll go back and forth a little bit about this.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump off your point. Like, obviously, now that he's signed with Michigan State, he cannot attend Flyers training camp, or else he'd have to like pay his own way. I
Yeah.
believe even if he was going to pay his own way, the way it works with the NCAA essentially is that, like, if he did attend and try to pay his own way, first of all, having to set that up, like, that would be such a burden for him. Like, I don't even know how you would go about doing that in the first place. Like, obviously, like paying your own bus, like, it'd be really weird, like, thing to kind of put into place with the Flyers for his camp. Also, like, they wouldn't let him play against other NHL teams because he's technically still an amateur. Like, he wouldn't be able to play in preseason games or things like that. So how are you effectively going to try out for an NHL team for never playing against, other competition? It's just not going to work out. The way I look at it, like, I could see why people might be bummed out in a sense that, oh, he doesn't get the chance to try out for the Flyers, and he hasn't signed his ELC yet and all that type of thing. But I just think, like, if you look at his development path, and if you look at the development path of really any young player trying to make an impact at the NHL, there's a very few limited prospects that really come in after their draft season and have success, right? Like, unless you're the elite of the elite, like a Bedard or a McDavid, we don't typically see guys get drafted, jump into the NHL right away, and have success, or have it be the most beneficial for their development. A lot of the
Even
time,
Jack Hughes could have used an extra year.
yeah, well, I just think about, like, let's give it like a Flyers example, right? Look at Nolan Patrick. They drafted him. He went right back into the NHL after that. Did not take another season in junior. We could argue that stunted a lot of his development, could have hurt him physically in terms of, having to play against older guys much younger, didn't get to build his body strength up, which could, contribute to further injuries and things like that. So
Sure,
I
great
just think
point.
if you look at, like, overall development for a young player and development path, typically jumping into the NHL right away after you get drafted isn't the best way to go about, bringing out a player's skills down the line and making sure they develop their skills in an efficient manner. Sometimes it can even stunt their growth because it's just too much all at once, too overwhelming for them, right? Potentially. So I think it's a safe move. I actually like the fact that it's NCAA, like he's choosing to go to
Right.
college here over the OHL. And the reason being is
Yeah.
it would have been a fourth season for him in the OHL. He's dominated that league essentially for the last two seasons, like in 2023-24. 71 points in 60 games, over a point a game. Last season, 24-25, 95 or 98 points in 57 games. Like, there's not much left for a guy to prove in a league where you're scoring 98 points in 57 games. And the fact of the matter is that league's just going to get weaker, right? Because a lot of the talent is leaving and going to the NCAA or graduating to the NHL or going to the AHL, perhaps, depending on age. So it would have ended up being a weaker league for him. So think about going back there, not getting really to play against the best competition at your age level. you could maybe develop even bad habits doing that, right? Because you're not playing, competition that really brings out like the best in you and your ability to challenge yourself, right? Like stagnation's not a good thing. So I think the fact that he can go into the NCAA, it's a new league. You're playing against men. You're playing against guys that are older, bigger than you. It's a new challenge for him, right? To be able
Yeah.
to try to dominate that level before he makes it to the NHL. And I think for the people that are concerned about like the Cutter Gauthier situation repeating itself here, obviously we don't know what we don't know. Like anything's possible. The guy hasn't signed his ELC and all that. But I will say, like, think about all the NCAA prospects the Flyers have signed over the years, right? Like the Gauthier situation is one outlier out of, probably hundreds of prospects over the last
Yeah.
30 years that have signed out of the NCAA. So I just see it as, sure that did happen, but I would imagine that Briere and Jones realize if something like that were to happen again under their regime, it'd be probably all, heads on the chopping block for them. So they probably realize, hey, we can't mess something like this up like we did potentially with Gauthier, though I don't think it was their fault. I believe that there was just some sort of miscommunication and maybe
Between
ultimately
the
the
old
player.
regime, probably.
Yeah, exactly, right? So I just think for them, they probably realize that, this is something that they need to get done in terms of him signing his ELC. And I would imagine that the Flyers probably think him going the NCAA route is the best for his development
Yes.
because it's not like Martone went to development camp and, tore the page out of the book and looked like the best player there, right? Like he looked good, but Alex Bump looked like the best player there. So I wonder if that also plays into their thinking in the sense that, like, hey, like we saw him in development camp, he looked good, but he didn't look like maybe like a prospect that's necessarily NHL ready this season. So, hey, like let's get him into the NCAA, or if he can get to that level, maybe that'll be more beneficial for his development versus starting out with us or going back to the OHL. And one thing I did want to mention just before I let you like comment, Yariv, is Kevin Kurz put out an article today going over Martone going to Michigan State. In the article, there's a quote from Danny Briere, so I guess he must have been able to talk to Briere. And essentially, before Kurz even got the question to Briere, he cut him off. So this is the tweet. Danny Briere isn't worried about a repeat of the Cutter Gauthier situation with Porter Martone. He even cut me off, Kurz said, before I could even get the question out. This is Briere's quote. There's no worries about that. The biggest difference is the communication between our camp and their camp, which wasn't there in our previous experience with Gauthier. So like we said, right, the communication was a factor with that situation. Does not seem to be the case with this situation. I think ultimately, as a young player, for Martone being able to go to that NCAA level and establish yourself as a dominant force there, and then graduate to the NHL a year after, I think that's only the best for his development going ahead.
Yeah, and
I personally don't think he was ready to play in the NHL this year. Like I think he could have done it maybe, but I just think that like him going into the NHL being an impact player on a nightly basis at 19, like probably not the case. It's rare that any 19-year-old is.
right. Yeah,
So
yeah. Look, I think there's a chance he could have had a successful season, but I think like Brent Flair was asked about it, right? And he said, "Hey, we're going to talk to him." And the conversation was probably something along this line. It was kind of like, "Look, you could come into camp. There's no, first of all, they don't guarantee anybody a spot.
you have to earn it. Yeah.
Except for like Matvey Michkov, which I don't even think it was like we guarantee you a spot. They probably just looked at him and be like, "Yo, dude, you're gonna make our team. We've
We
evaluated
don't
your
have the talent on the wing that you
well,
possess.
it's not only
So
that he's that good, right? Like Porter
yeah,
Martone
yeah.
is not on Michkov's level. Maybe one day he'll get there, but he's not at this current point.
Yeah.
Excuse me. But they looked at him and they go, "Look, you do have a chance to make the team. Like let's be blunt. You do have a chance. There are spots open. You are clearly one of the best young players in the organization, but there are other young guys we are considering. It is a risk for you. We know you don't want to go to the OHL. If you go to the OHL, you don't get paid, right? Why don't you look, they probably said like it's your call, right? Like we'll give you the ELC and we'll give you the opportunity. If you want to go to the OHL, we support you. We can let you do whatever you want. But it's probably in your best interest to have a more risk-free opportunity. Go to the NCAA, right? You will get paid, right? You will make money, more money than you've ever made before, right? So he's going to get paid. You're going to have time to bulk up. It's a stronger league. We don't have that new rule yet in place. It'll be in place next year, so we can't drop you in the minors. so you can't like get your ELC and then play in the AHL where we can call you back up midway through the season. This is your safest bet to play a higher level of hockey, like you were saying, also get paid. And quite frankly, it's college. He's gonna have a good time. You go compete for a Frozen Four. You're gonna be on a good team. Like I think he weighed it and he's kind of like, okay, I could take the risk and collect my ELC, but then I might be back in the OHL where I'm ready to move forward. At least this way, I take it in my own hands. I move forward. And then, like I don't think this move was made of spite. And if you look at the amount of players that are going to NCAA, to your point, Vasili, to your initial point, how many teams are going to be dealing with this exact same
Yeah.
situation? It's just something we're going to have to get a lot more comfortable seeing. It doesn't mean that everybody's going to be Kevin Hayes or, you know
It's
what I
going to be
mean,
the new
or
feeder
Fox.
system. It's going to be the new feeder
Right.
system. Like you're going to have, your local junior level feed into the OHL and
Yeah.
the CHL. Like you're going to have your junior
The,
Bs and junior Cs and junior A, for example, like in Canada.
yeah.
That's what we name
They're
it. It's going to feed into your OHL and CHL and WHL and QMJHL. And then instead of, the OHL, QMJHL, CHL, WHL, instead of that being like a 15-year-old, 16-year-old to like 21-year-old league, basically what's going to happen is it's going to be like a teenager league. You're going to be like 16 to 19 maybe,
right.
and then graduate to college from there, right? It's going to be more
Yes.
of a feeder system into the NCAA, I think. That's
Yeah.
at least the
I,
way it seems structured to me. And
yeah.
I think too, like one thing to mention, at least for Martone, is like he potentially could sign his ELC once his year is done with Michigan State, right? Like, so it could be similar to what we've seen in the past with certain players. You finish at college, who knows when you're going to exit based on like your team's performance in the Frozen Four and so on. There might still be a week left of regular season or even playoffs for Martone to potentially enter in for the Flyers, right? So
Yeah.
we'll see what happens. They might just
And
give him the contract kind of as a reward to end the season. So
yeah, and I think for sure that they look at him as like, all right, you're penciled into the lineup for next year. They might not be telling him that, but I imagine that's how they're kind of viewing it. And excuse me. And I also imagine we probably will get a rule change in the future where players will be able to sign their ELC, but it will be told until like it won't be activated and they won't make a penny off of it until they officially leave college and start their pro
yeah,
career to try to
similar
get
to
around this, right?
it's similar to what happens now with the
With the
CHL,
juniors,
right?
yeah, with the juniors league,
Yeah, like
yeah,
literally the
or
contracts
even
get told, right?
overseas,
Like the ELC contracts that get signed for kids that go back to the CHL, for example, like nothing counts, obviously, as everybody knows. So till they
yeah.
actually turn pro and make it, to the AHL level, NHL level when it permits them, nothing, is taken out of the contract in terms of money or
Yeah,
years. So I'm
it's
assuming we'll
just going to
see something
change.
eventually. Yeah,
Yeah. We're
exactly.
we're in a changing period, right? Like we brought it up last week when Vasili wasn't on here, right? They're modifying the rule to allow one exceptional to be in the NHL next year, to be in the AHL next year. That's 19 years old. Porter
Yeah.
Martone is not ready for that, but they've recognized that things are changing, so they will probably change more often. And I think it's really silly that people are going like immediately, this is a terrible decision, and he's going to cut or go to us. Like you cannot let the
I
trauma of one player dictate every decision that your organization makes. First of all, Cutter Gauthier, in my opinion, has a bad attitude. I think the way he and other players, and I like Kevin Hayes, but also bad attitude when it came to making a decision that way. Most of these guys who have made that decision wasn't a great decision. Now they earn the right to do that, but it's not a good look when you're like a teenager and Isaac Howard, he just made that decision. Well, again, I don't know the reasons, but it's not the most respectful way to go about business because people are investing in you. Like it's not a good look for you as an athlete. And sure, some athletes can get away with it, but for the most part, you really don't want to have that type of leverage like over a team and just like trigger it and then burn bridges in the NHL coming into the NHL because it's very short-sighted stuff. Now, I'm not saying it's like the worst thing
Well,
ever,
it paints a
but
bad picture. Like
yes,
it just paints the picture that that player at a very young age already has an ego difficult to deal with. Things like
like
that, right?
like my
So,
attitude towards Cutter Gote was by the time he left was like good riddance. It's like we came in being like, "Oh, we love this kid," and now we're like good riddance. An entire fan base thinks
well,
that about a guy.
I just think to Kurz's athletic article, like Breer's point in the quote that I mentioned with the fact that just there wasn't communication between his camp and their camp. It just felt like there was like a disrespect for some reason
Well, he
between
refused to
Gautier.
talk to them too.
Yeah, yeah. And
It's
it's
like
like
even
legends.
worse.
And it's legends of the Flyers like John LeClaire and like stuff like that they sent to like watch his game. Just like you like
There was a way to
didn't
handle it. You
want
could
yeah, like you didn't want to talk to a guy who was like a 50 goal scorer, like Hall of Fame type player in the NHL. Like that makes it seem like you have a huge ego, right? Like that's
fellow
not
American, yeah, like
yeah, it's
a
not the
guy
way
you hope.
you want to go about business kind of entering the league. So yeah, like
Well, that's my point. It's like I'm sorry to cut you off, but it's like that on top of it shows that it was his attitude, not that it's just all these situations, but it's like you could have talked to people the whole way and been like, "Hey, look,
this is the
I,
reason
I
why I don't want to
respect you
do it.
guys. I
Yeah.
like you. I just can't do it for this reason or whatever. It's not the right. You
Well,
know, he
not
didn't even
giving
go
any well, yeah, not talking to them, not giving any explanation is childish, right? So
right to them. He doesn't have to give us an explanation, but he has to give them an explanation. The team that invested a fifth overall
that
pick,
drafted you.
which is
Exactly.
essentially like in money terms, what, like $8 million? If you
Well,
think
like
about it, right? Most players
yeah,
who get drafted that high will make about $8
end
million
up yeah becoming that
a
type
year.
of a player, right? Where you're
So
getting paid in the upper echelon and things like that. I just think like yeah, like to bring it back around to Martone, like
he doesn't
anybody that's
seem that way.
yeah, he doesn't seem that way. Obviously, we don't, you know the kid as much at this point. Like you could have said the same thing, when they drafted Gauthier that he never seemed that way either. Whatever. Either way, I will say that development wise, if I'm looking at it from a pure hockey standpoint, like what's the best for this player to develop his skills and become a better hockey player? This is the best route for him because the OHL is only becoming a weaker league. The NCAA is going to become a considerably stronger league with all the
Yeah.
talent getting added. And if you're Martone, like I just think the NHL might have been a little bit too much for him to chew on this season. Like I said, like there's only a special handful of players that can jump to the NHL level out of the OHL and have success and not stunt their growth and have it be a bad thing for their
I
development, right?
yeah,
I
yeah.
think I think NCAA kind of saves him from that reality where like you don't have the risk of jumping to the NHL and having a poor season. You can go to the NCAA and dominate,
And
build yourself up
bulk up,
yeah,
right?
build yourself up even more, firstly in the weight room and just getting accustomed to playing against older men and a
Yeah,
pro team, right?
where your
Because
6'3" frame is not as huge of an advantage. You know
that's
what
what
I
I
mean?
mean. I think like at the OHL level, he was having such an easy time dominating because that 6'3" frame was such an advantage when you compared to like your average, let's say 16, 17-year-old kid that's probably like 160, like 5'10 or 5'11 potentially playing
Yeah.
in that league, right? Whereas you're going to go to the NCAA now and you're playing against guys that might be 25, 24, have considerable amount of weight on their body. It's going to be a lot closer to the conditions you're going to face in the NHL, right? So I just think going to the NCAA, it's going to ready him more for the NHL type and NHL style of game. And that's been a common theme for NCAA hockey, right? Like it's a known fact that the NCAA style is a lot closer right now to what the NHL is versus the other
And
junior leagues. So
yeah, and for those people freaking out, like if we would have drafted James Hagens, he would have been in the exact same situation
he
because
would have
they
went back to Boston College.
also,
Yeah.
yes, with no ELC, and it's just like there's just like this immediate, and I think this is the minority. I think it's a loud minority of people in the panic button. I think most people are completely okay with this,
Agreed.
and
Yeah.
and like you said, like the ability because they have a lot more time off, right? He's not going to play as many games, so it's going to be bulking season for him, which is really what we need from him
It's
against
weekend
tougher
games.
opponent. Yes.
It's like
Yeah,
weekend games. So pretty much you have like the whole week. He'd be either going to class or the workout room. So
yes. And also, what changes the situation is that the Flyers have another prospect on his team, which again, nobody seems to be worried about him not signing with the Flyers. I mean, he's not a high draft pick, but he was a second round pick. These guys are also capable of doing this as well. And a guy like Shane Van Sage is probably a player that most teams in the league would covet as well and could also pull something like this, but nobody seems to be bringing that up at
well,
all.
it's a 1 out of 100 situation with Gauthier. Like how many NCAA guys have the Flyers signed over the last like 15, 20
Or
years? Like,
not even the
yeah,
Flyers, but around the NHL,
league
right?
wide. Yeah, it doesn't happen
Ryan
often.
Leonard just
Doesn't
came
happen
over.
often.
Jacob Perreault just came over, right? Like they were high end. college
Yeah, it
players.
doesn't happen very often where these guys will defect to another team. Like we were saying, or like the Gote situation, the Hayes situation. It's kind of
Yeah,
like outliers.
I think
So
this was an agreed upon internal plan between the
yeah,
two sides. And that's very different than halfway through Cutter Gautier's plan, there's a regime change and a completely different mindset now behind the organization,
yeah.
and it was also John Tortorella as a coach versus, which I don't think was like really the deterrent. But like now it's like Rick Todd, it's just a whole different situation. So let's talk about his teammates, because Michigan State does seem like to be a team that there's a good chance will make the Frozen
They
Four.
have a really good program. Yeah.
Yeah, they have a really good program, and now with adding Porter Martone, I mean, they could win. They also added Caden Lindstrom, the last year's fourth overall pick, or last draft's fourth overall pick, Columbus's fourth
Two
overall
really
pick.
big additions.
Yeah,
So
they have Shane Van Sagi, also two members of the Buffalo Sabres, a defenseman in Patrick Geary, and another defenseman in Maxim Sturbeck. Another big name, Anthony Romani, drafted by Vancouver Canucks. Colin Ralph, drafted by the St. Louis Blues. Matthew Leahy, drafted by the Leafs. And then Riker Lee as well. He was also part of this year's draft, like a borderline first round pick type of guy as well. And then Austin Baker, and that's like the skaters. He's a member of the Detroit Red Wings. And then Detroit also has Trey Augustine, a well-known name, as the goaltender. And then Melvin Strahl is a member. Their other goaltender is a member of the Columbus Blue Jackets as well. So it's an NHL heavy squad in general. And obviously, Caden Lindstrom could do what everybody's worried about to Columbus, right? But this is
nobody
just
seems
like
worried about that. So
right. But again, he's another example of a kid who probably is, he had
technically, there's think about all the situations, all the players that could do this to their respective team. The chances of most of them or any of them doing it, it's like 1%. Like it's such a slim
yes.
chance, right? Like
I am curious. Where's Caden Lindstrom? I want to see how old. I imagine he's not that much older than Porter Martone. Right. So he's February
I don't think
'06.
so. He got
Yeah.
hurt though. He had a lot of
Right.
injury trouble, so we'll see how he bounces back from that.
So he's a guy that ideally probably should be in the AHL as well, like Porter Martone. But again, this is like you said, he missed an entire year. This is a great opportunity for them. But they're a really strong squad. They should go pretty far, and I expect that like when they do lose, inevitably, we will get an ELC for Porter Martone, and he will probably join the Flyers if they make the playoffs, or maybe he'll join them just for a handful of games. But he'll probably definitely join the Phantoms, assuming they make the playoffs again, which they are a pretty good squad on paper. They most likely will make the playoffs, maybe go even further, and then adding a guy like Porter Martone in the playoffs could actually take them over the edge to become, a championship caliber team down there. So this is I see nothing wrong with it. I actually like I saw it and I was like, okay, good. Like yeah, part of me is excited. I want to see Porter Martone play in the NHL, but the
I,
wise side of me goes, no, this is the right move. This was
I
the
thought
right
this
move
was
for
the
both
best case
parties.
scenario. When I saw it, I thought it to my mind like this is the best
Yeah.
way forward for the Flyers, best way forward for him, just for his development and becoming a better player. I think, like I said, I've said it already, like probably I don't know how many times during the first 20 minutes, but I just think like as a player, we've seen so many times, even, if you're a fan watching and you follow this organization, if you follow the sport in general, how many times do you see guys get rushed into the league and it ends up being a big mistake and detriment to their development? So I just think, the more cautious you can be with a prospect, it's typically the better case, right? Like we don't ever see, oh, look, they didn't rush him to the NHL, that ruined his career. Usually it's the opposite. Oh, look, they rushed him to the NHL and that ruined his career, right?
Yeah.
So typically, I would say just if you look at it historically, like nothing wrong with this. If anything, I think it'll benefit him. So
Yeah. I honestly prefer, outside of guys on the caliber of like Celebrini, and I think
even he
Celebrini.
didn't do it really.
Yeah, but he did come over for NCAA.
Yeah, that's what I
But
mean.
I'm
Yeah.
saying like outside of the right. I see what you're saying. But outside of like players like Celebrini, even Bedard, like most guys would benefit from another year of development before coming in the NHL. So, well, if we take our scared hats off, this is actually the best move
It's the
for
rational
Martone
move. Yeah.
and for the Flyers. And if you think about that, ELC now will extend further into his age and is actually also better for the Flyers. So, assuming it all goes well, which I have no reason to think it won't, this is the best long-term decision, and we're not moving away from having young guys make the roster too. There are plenty of other names out there, and we're going to talk about another one that's that are capable of making the Flyers, and it's going to be a mix, and there's going to be another set of changes in this upcoming season and off season that'll be gearing them up to become a surefire playoff team, and adding a Porter Martone who's a year older, a year stronger, a year more ready for the NHL when that team is ready to compete is probably the wiser decision as well for the organization. So while I understand why the Cutter Gauthier would put a bad taste in people's mouths, we cannot allow one move, one bad moment to reflect. It's kind of like the Jake O'Brien thing where or not Jake O'Brien. I'm sorry. It's even like the Roger McQueen thing. It's like it's not fair to Roger McQueen to be like, oh, he's another Brandon Wheat King. He's another big center. It's like, okay, it doesn't mean what happened to him is gonna exactly be the same case what happened to Nolan
Yeah, it's
Patrick.
not always it's not always the same scenario.
Yeah,
So
it's unreasonable to go like the reason I didn't want McQueen that high are for different reasons. I mean, the injury part is part of it, but it wasn't because he was a Brandon Wheat King, and with Jake O'Brien, it wasn't because it's another Jay O'Brien. It's like, and even Elliot Denoyer, like I made that joke that like his brother kind of let us down a little bit, but at the same time, like I would have been very happy with not Elliot, Caleb Denoyer. It's like we cannot that like this is not a mature way of thinking. So I think the Flyers did the right thing. I think everything's going to be okay, and it's going to be awesome to watch him develop over the next year, and then hopefully get him at the end of the season, which I anticipate he will like to sign as soon as possible and come over and play pro hockey because he's on the cusp of being in the NHL. He is old for his draft year. Like he is a guy who most likely, there's like a 95% chance that next year he's going to be surefire NHL ready. Okay, let's get into the next topic, and that's Rick Tocchet. This is not going to be that deep of a topic, but topic. This is weird. But Rick Tocchet was selected to be an assistant coach in the upcoming Olympics. He's going to be one of the assistants for Team Canada, obviously. Just wanted to highlight this as like another one of these reminders where like we didn't hire a coach that's just loved by the Flyers and just another Flyers guy. Obviously, he also coached at the Four Nations. He is one of the premier, at least in the hockey world's mindset, one of the premier coaches in hockey, right? Typically, you really have what, three or four guys taken
usually
from each
three guys.
country, right? And then maybe they have like an extra coach, like a skybox coach, something like that.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
he is one of the guys who's going to be on the bench. I don't know exactly what he's going to be coaching. My assumption is defense, but I really don't know. We'll see what that ends up being. But still, a pretty cool moment for Rick Tocchet. He's going to go represent his country. There's a good chance that two members of the Flyers will be on there. That Travis Konechny and Travis Sanheim will. There's a very good chance that, going off the Four Nations, that both of them will be playing on that team as well. So pretty cool. And nice to see that Tocchet is so highly well regarded. I cannot wait for next season already to watch this guy coach. But I thought that was a nice like little moment to be like reassured that, hey, like this guy's consistently being selected by the NHL community as a top coach. And he's a big name, and he's our coach now, and also an ex-Flyer great. So it's like the combination of everything I just feel like is really good. And again, John Tortorella also got that treatment with Team USA. So seems like it's pretty good.
Yeah, I think for Tocchet, just and Team Canada, like you're obviously not going to get selected to go to the Olympic stage unless Hockey Canada thinks that you're a viable candidate, viable option, a really, effective coach. So to me, it just signals the fact that, he's one of the premier coaches in the NHL, in the league in general. And the Flyers obviously have just hired him on, so that can't be a bad thing, that's for sure. Another thing too that I look at is he's a guy that obviously builds relationships with players. You're going to be at that Olympic tournament. You're going to, have a lot of talented players around you. Not to say that that's the time where you can build relationships with players and try to poach them for your own benefits for later on, but you never know what types of relationships you build at those tournaments. And the Flyers have a lot of cap space coming up this summer. So, yeah, just something to think about.
Yeah. Yeah, it's also true. Yeah, they get a little more used to working with Rick Tocchet. Maybe it
Maybe they
attracts more
like
players.
him. Exactly, right? You never know.
Yeah.
Think about the Dvorak situation. So he was a big factor there. So I think Taka just with his cachet around the league can really help them in terms of
Yeah.
attracting
Great,
players.
great point. Okay. The next piece I want to talk about is the other player that, there's like a recency bias with dev camp and, when players excel at dev camp, it's exciting. So like we talk about those players. There were obviously three big names at dev camp that didn't play. We didn't hit the ice at all. So nobody got to watch them. So nobody gets to talk about them. Obviously, Denver Barkey and Oliver Bonk are two of those names. Both guys who are let's be honest, like 90% chance they're going to be playing in the AHL this upcoming year. Both of them need to touch pro hockey first. But the other guy is Jet Luchanko. And we have the excitement of Alex Bump, makes complete sense. I totally see him as, a top candidate, but he's top of two candidates. The other one I still believe to be Jet Luchanko. And I believe a guy like Jet Luchanko is still very underrated by the internet community. They have this like understanding of this guy. You see him all of a sudden he wasn't on any rankings. Now he's on rankings. I have a feeling he's gonna be one of these guys where we're like, oh, how did we miss out on Jet Luchanko? But I look at the fact that Jet Luchanko, he came in to camp, made the team early. Tortorella loved him, obviously. And I think the team also loved him, like the organization loved him too, but knew the wiser move was to send him back. And it was kind of this, internal, consistent conversation about where he should be. And I think it was always a 9-game trial, is what they were kind of, what the organization was leaning to as a whole. But then I look at when he got called back up, when his season ended with Guelph and he came to the AHL. He had some okay success in the regular season, but then had 6 points in 7 games, I think it was, in the playoffs. And I look at a guy like Alex Bump, who also played well in the playoffs, but did not produce as much. He had 2 goals in 1 game and then no other points. And I look at Luchanko being what, 3 years younger, give or take a little bit more than 3 years, younger than Alex Bump, and the way he was able to excel in the playoffs, playing a more difficult position as well in all situations, power play, penalty kill, and playing the center, where Alex Bump did play power play. I believe he had some penalty kill as well, but it was playing a wing position. I do believe Alex Bump has a very good chance of making the team. But when I look at Luchanko and what he's done in the AHL, the fact that as he got more established, he seems to be a guy that I think it made it even more comfortable for the Flyers to allow Porter Martone not to fight for a spot, because they're looking at it as not just Alex Bump, but Alex Bump and Jet Luchanko have a chance to make this team out of camp. And, he might end up going back to the OHL. That's possible, but it's probably not the best avenue for him. And the fact that he was already so close and already fit in like a glove at the AHL level at the end of last season. Plus, now nobody has seen him at Dev Camp, so nobody's like talking about him. But there's a good chance that he was the best player at Dev Camp this year, and that we just didn't get to see him on the ice. I'm kind of under the belief right now that Jet Luchanko, as much as Alex Bump, in the Flyers' mind, is being penciled in as a serious candidate to grab one of these spots for the starting roster. What do you think?
Yeah, I think Luchanko has a really good chance to make the team. Like I think people, I don't say they're forgetting, but to your point, recency bias. Like I think people are forgetting how impressive that he was, in camp and to start out last season. Like it looked like he belonged, and it wasn't just from the offensive standpoint because that's usually a lot of what it is, right? That you see a player who gets picked,
Great point.
very high in the
Yeah.
draft, click offensively and stand out that way, but he looked good, I would say less on the offensive side and more defensively, which probably is a harder thing to learn at the NHL level. Just picking up coverages, being able to play in that defensive role. And I think too, his speed obviously stood out as well, right? So I just think if you look at a head coach like John Tortorella loving this kid as much as he did, and he obviously is a coach that's very hard to kind of make that impression on. You'd have to imagine a guy like Rick Tocchet is also going to love Jet Luchanko and everything he brings to the
Totally.
table. So I think he's probably going to fall in love with Luchanko just as much as Tortorella did, and
Yeah.
probably say, "Hey, give this kid to me now, and let's see what we can do this season." Something along those lines. I mean, he's gonna have to earn it too, right? He's gonna have a good
Sure.
camp. He's gonna have to, put his time in and probably have some impressive preseason games to cement himself into the lineup. But I just look at it like in the same way we were talking about Martone and his kind of development and what's the best for his course of action and kind of moving his career forward, right? Like think about Luchanko, if he has to go back to the OHL for another season, like, is that really going to be the best thing for him in his
Well,
development at this point?
for
Like,
Guelph would be the shame because he won't
yeah,
have a chance to compete in the playoffs.
that's what I
And
mean.
yeah,
That's what I mean. Like, I just think for his development right now, like, what else is there for him to prove at the OHL level? Like, sure, he could make the World Junior team and have an even more pronounced role on that team, maybe. But like, if you're the Flyers, for example, you could, let's say you weren't hypothetically sure of what to do, you could have him make the team. You could send him to the World Juniors and bring him back if you wanted. Like they probably wouldn't
true.
do
Yeah,
that. They
that's
probably
true too.
wouldn't. They probably wouldn't do that. But we've seen it happen before in the
It
NHL. So
it's
I
possible.
think I think there's options. I just think like for his development, um, you know, the OHL at this point probably is something that he's outgrown. I don't think he's going to learn too much more there. It might be a place where he actually picks up more bad habits. So I just think, if he can get to that NHL level and earn his spot, I would say this is probably the best place for him to develop his skills further at the level. See what it's like, to be an NHL player for more than 9 games and how you can develop your skills at the NHL level to try to become a better player.
Yeah,
I mean, if he could go to the AHL, it would probably maybe be the best case for him.
sure. Yes, to
But
start off in the
obviously,
minors. Yeah.
with his age, I would say the best case for him development wise would be like start in the AHL, have a killer month and a half, earn your call up, and then kind of like 2 months in, somebody gets hurt or something, call him up just because he earned it, let's say, and then
Well,
make your NHL debut there, right? But I think to your point, he's going to make the team. That's my thought, but we'll
yeah.
see what happens, obviously.
Yeah, and look, there's also the option of like not starting him in center at the NHL level, which I don't think is exactly what they want to do. But you have, obviously you have Dvorak and Cates now, and you have Zegras who obviously can play center. So they have like all these options with the lineup. They could put a guy like Noah Cates on his wing, to take some of the faceoffs off to help defensively. Like you can play him in so many different avenues, and I also think his game on a two-way sense is more refined than a guy like Porter Martone, where Porter Martone's offensive game is better than Luchanko's, but his two-way game, his skating ability, is not where Luchanko's is. And I see like the fact that he got, not that many games, let's say about 20 games in total at the pro level already, right? He is mentally a mature player. I mean, so is Porter Martone, but Luchanko is a little bit older. And then you give him the fact that he is like a workhorse in the gym. He's got about 2 weeks right now. Like, what kind of shape, or 2 months right now, what kind of shape he's going to come in to camp? He already came in great shape the year before. Now he's coming in like knowing that he can make the team. Like, I can just imagine this kid kind of coming in and, we say ideally his best spot is AHL. I think it's more of that not having the luxury to put him in the AHL is like what's really killing it. But I do think there's a chance that a player like this could make the Flyers out of camp, even if he did have the ability to play in for the Phantoms. So part of me is kind of going like, I don't know, like a lot of the public views him as a middle six forward type of prospect, but I don't view him that way. My view of Jet Luchanko is a surefire top six forward with an opportunity to be a top line center. Now, maybe the public doesn't view that, but I think the Flyers internally view him that way, which is why they drafted him where they drafted him and why they skipped over Zeev Buium to grab him. So when I account for that too, I go, are the Flyers as high on him as I am? And I think so.
Yeah, like I don't like, at least for me, I think to your point, like in developing into a top line center. Like I don't think he's ever going to be like your 100-point top line center, but I think it's more going to be like in the ilk of like a Mike Richards where like he'll get you your 75, 80 points, but he's going to be real good for you defensively in
Right,
all aspects
exactly.
and all facets of the ice. He can play against the other team's best players.
Patrice
And
Bergeron
also,
wasn't a hundred
yeah,
point
that
player.
that too, right? Like another great comparison. But yeah, like I think he's going to be that type of a guy where even though he might not be scoring, at an insane rate, like over a point a game, the way he's playing on the ice is going to enable the line mates around him to, score, create scoring chances. Like he's going to be a really big play driver, obviously, just with his speed in general in terms of pushing up the ice. But then just think about like the details of his game, real strong on the puck, really good positioning defensively, just everything you want basically from that, second line, first line type of center. So.
Yeah, and I have a feeling he's going to come in probably weighing a lot more, probably a little
Well,
bit bigger,
even
you know.
even last season, right? Like he was jacked up for a kid who was 18. So
It's
think of
signed at 17. He
yeah,
came in
17.
right,
Yeah.
but no. I mean, he was 18 in the season, but 17 years old when he showed up at camp, he didn't look like a scrawny 17-year-old, right?
Which most do at that age. So
Right. So it's like he looks like a guy who could make the NHL this year. So I'm very high on Jet Luchanko. Like I brought this up in the last episode when we were talking about rankings with Chris, and I was
he's
kind
like
of
the
like,
forgotten man right now for some
well, like
reason.
Jacob
Little.
Peltier made the NHL and Ryan Leonard made the NHL, and I really like Ryan Leonard. When I look at Peltier though, like if I had the option of having one or the other, Peltier or Luchanko, I'm taking Luchanko 9 out of 10 times. So like other people might not view it that way, but the way I see it, I value a player with Luchanko's skill sets more than Peltier. I see Peltier as a higher risk as an NHL player than a guy like Luchanko. Luchanko, I'm like,
You
this is
mean
a
like Perot? You
surefire.
mean like
Oh,
Perot?
Perot, Jacob Perot. I said
Yeah, yeah.
Peltier.
No
Yeah.
worries.
Sorry,
The
sorry. Yeah, yeah.
Jacobs, man. The
Wrong,
Jacobs.
wrong P. Yeah. Thank you for correcting me because that would have been stupid.
I knew
Yeah.
what you were
So
talking about, though. Don't worry.
yeah. Because I said Ryan Leonard, obviously, and they're
Yeah.
teammates. But yeah. So Perot, like, I would much rather have, personally, a Luchanko over Perot. Like Perot is like maybe a fancier guy, but I think Luchenko's a better playmaker. Like he's not as dynamic with his hands and all that, but I don't really care about any of that stuff. I just look at the guy's ability to play against better players in the NHL, and I think Luchenko is modeled like his game is kind of perfect for that. So we'll see what happens. I also think it wouldn't be the worst thing with Luchenko to burn a year of his ELC, considering the situation. If you do bring him in for 30 games and you go, okay, maybe he's not exactly ready for the NHL, we'll burn the 1 year of his ELC. We'll consider a development year. He'll do 50% with the Flyers, 50% with his juniors team. Maybe he'll get
Play at the World
traded.
Juniors.
Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe he'll get traded and get to play, in the playoffs, play in World Juniors, like you were saying. Like, so I think part of that's also, it's like, okay, well, that's our fallback is that we burn a year of his ELC. Okay, it's not the end of the world,
Yeah, I just
right?
think him starting in the OHL off the bat, it's not a benefit to anybody really. So I think
Yeah,
the Flyers
playing
probably recognize that.
Yeah, playing for Guelph, who look, maybe they're better next year. I don't know.
They're
Like,
gonna be even worse because just think about the talent graduating again.
right,
Like it's
exactly.
not
Like,
gonna be good.
right. They're eh, people. I do think people are undervaluing the value of him playing for such a bad team, though, because he
He have to
is
do it all. He have to
the
do it all,
man.
basically.
Yes, and
Yeah.
consistently forced to do more and consistently, like, I understand the bad habits thing. I get that. But like again, he's constantly outmatched. Like every game is a grind for him,
Yeah.
right? He didn't have the luxury of like a Barkey and a Bonk who were on a super team. He was like the opposite. He had to go up against that team, not purely by himself, because they had some decent talent on Guelph. They weren't like no scoring at all from anybody in the lineup. But he was the man there. And I think about a guy like Travis Konechny, who came from a very similar situation. I think he was playing for Oshawa, where he was by far the best player on his team. Eventually he did get traded, but again, that's another guy who made the NHL earlier than people expected, undersized, but also like was more physically built. I just think like with Luchanko, they're penciling him in, and I think him and Alex Bump are the most likely of the young guys to make the team. And
Yeah,
and it makes sense.
them two and Grabankin are probably my top three
I,
choices.
yeah, I think Gurbankin's also in that mix. which is why he wasn't a development camp. Because he's like been doing this for a while. He played
Well,
pro
he
hockey
went
already.
to 2 dev camps with the Leafs too, so like he's
Right.
kind of graduated from that, right?
Yes. He is like a sure and like AHL player at this point.
Yeah.
And I also think he has a chance too, especially when you look at that fourth line and you consider the fact that like they're not going to play Bump on the fourth line. They're not going to play Luchanko on the fourth line.
But they
So
might play Grabank in there.
right,
Yeah.
he does fall into that mix because he has the grittiness, he's got the size, he's got a scoring touch. He knows how to check, so he is that type of player that maybe can make his way into the NHL to start the season as well. So we'll see how he comes in. But I don't know. It's going to be a very interesting conversation, and things will get a lot more real as we get to September, even the end of August, and we'll have a better idea of what the lookout and health situation of a lot of the players is. Kind of, because they all have to be healthy, obviously, for camp for this to be relevant. Okay. Just want to remind everyone to please like and subscribe, hit the notification bell for notification, get notified when we release these episodes. And also for the audio version, go to Spotify and iTunes, give us a rating and a follow if you can. That is the best way to support this show. So please do that now if you have not done that so far. So wanted to talk a little bit about the Flyers top line from the previous year. And that'd be Sean Couturier, Matvei Michkov, and Travis Konechny. We walk into this year's situation with new opportunities. Obviously, a guy like Trevor Zegras is a humongous X factor into what the lines could be. Currently, at least by the fan base, penciled in as top six forward. Me and Chris were talking about last episode. Chris thinks he's going to be number one center. I don't believe that. I think Couturier is going to be the number one center to start off the season. But I do look at it like if I had to pick his ideal line mates, even with what we have right now, and let's just assume Bump, let's assume Forrester's not ready to start the season,
Okay.
and that Bump and Luchanko are on the team. I still look at it as those are the best guys to put him with to start the season. They had the most success. Like Chris was trying to say that that he thinks Owen Tippett, and I actually do not agree with that at all. I don't think him and Owen Tippett. Now, maybe that would be different next year under a different system with a new coach.
I didn't see much chemistry from him and Tippett. Like,
yeah, me neither.
I honestly, I saw chemistry to end the season with Couturier and Michkov. My only thing with that is, like, if you look at who can unleash Michkov the most offensively and who can have more of an impact offensively, and you're a team that already has had trouble scoring. Like, it's probably going to be Zegras. Personally, I would just say, hey, let's start the season. Zegras, Konechny, Michkov, go. That's what I would do. That's what I would do as the top line. And then I would probably do like Couturier on the second line with Tippett and
maybe Bobby Brink.
Yeah, Brink. I mean, you got to hope Forrester's healthy. Obviously,
Forrester changes a lot of things. I would completely agree with that.
That changes it, but yeah, like. Probably Tippett and Brink, right? If that's the case. And I think we've seen Couturier look good with Brink in the past. And the reason why I wouldn't mind, I think Couturier and Tippett actually is because Tippett, like Couturier, we know he's not the fleetest of foot. He's not a guy that's going to carry the puck into the zone anymore. But Tippett can kind of do that for you. He can kind of take the puck up.
What if Luchanko plays on the right side with Couturier? Should be interesting.
I just think I just don't like it because I think you want.
I want Luchanko in the middle. Yeah.
Yeah, you want to develop him as a center.
That's where. Yeah.
I just think it's a stupid move because your center depth is lacking. So why are you going to put your best center prospect?
Because
not at center.
It's easier to adapt to the NHL not playing the center. But to your point, you want to develop Luchanko.
Sink or swim. Yeah, sink or swim.
Also, yes, there is that point. Here's my thing on why I don't like that line to start the season, and I'm making it an assumption about Trevor Zegras, so it's not fair to him because I don't know exactly what his two-way game is like. But when I see a guy like Michkov who's not great two-way, a guy like Zegras, who's not great two-way and also not very good at face-offs, and then an undersized TK who has a two-way game, but primarily an attacking two-way game, I see them, and this is what I was talking to Chris about, I see them getting pummeled in their own zone.
They could, yeah.
And that's my risk. And I'm like, because I think Zegras could help other guys excel too, like a guy like Owen Tippett,
Yeah, that
potentially.
could be a good combo as well. I agree.
Right, but that's all I'm saying is that like I'm thinking about a balance of the full line. Do I agree that Trevor Zegras and Michkov would be extremely interesting? That's why we're like when I see Zegras and Michkov, I see Tyson Forrester on the left-hand side because I'm like,
Yeah, it's
okay,
dynamic.
there's the size that you need and the defensive ability and the ability to dig in the corners that could help
Yeah,
balance that lineup.
I will say though, my reasoning for starting them together, the three of them, if you look at the NHL seasons historically, usually teams are not great defensively to start. They get better defensively throughout.
Definitely.
So my assumption is this, like have them start. Teams are going to be a little bit caught off guard. Maybe they can run the score up on some people, put up a lot of numbers. I also look at it too, like you have three guys that could arguably be the most three talented players on your team together. Maybe they're just so good offensively that it doesn't matter about defense in the sense that like maybe they just have the puck so damn much that you're not too concerned
It's
about their defensive play because they're never in the defensive zone. So that's something to look at too, right?
sure,
So
sure.
who knows?
What
I'd be
about
interested.
oh,
I'd be
I'm sorry.
interested. Yeah, I was just gonna say I'd be interested to see that trio. I'd also be interested to see Couturier in the middle, um, Michkov, and then instead of
TK.
having Konechny, maybe put Forster there too.
He has
But
to be
like he
healthy,
also
but
has to
I'd
be
be
healthy.
yes,
Yeah.
I agree with you. I also think that would be an interesting line, and that's why I was like kind of excluding Forrester because it changes a lot. I totally
Yeah.
agree. The options change dramatically because like Tippett is also not amazing defensively. It's really Forrester is the best two-way winger we have on the team.
My one
What?
rule for next season, and like this is just me watching them, is
Yeah,
I don't play Michkov and Tippett on the same line. I don't
I
think their
didn't love it
styles
either.
benefit each other whatsoever.
I and that look
Well,
that could change under
they might
Tocchet.
develop more chemistry. They're gonna play longer together. They're gonna understand where they might be on the ice a little bit better because
They
you've
had
played
a
more.
short spurt of success.
Yeah, but like I just mean in the sense that like you only play like you're Tippett, you've been on the team for a couple seasons. Mitchkov came in as a rookie. You only really knew each other like for one season. There's always a chance to develop the chemistry more. Also, you wonder too, like as Mitchkov gets better at English, does that also help just develop chemistry with his
Oh,
teammates? Because
absolutely.
like
Yeah.
there, I'm sure the first half, like a lot of last season, they just didn't know what he was saying on the
So,
ice, or like it was hard to interpret.
yeah. So here's another thought, which I don't think people are going to be with me on this one. If Jet Luchanko makes the team, he's going to play the middle, ideally third line center. I think Dvorak was brought in to be a fourth line center with utility on power play and penalty kill time and the ability to move up in left wing or center, depending on injury
Yeah, yeah.
situations. What about Noah Cates, Trevor Zegras, and Matvey Michkov? And I know that having Noah Cates on there isn't the fanciest of things, but he does have a scoring touch. He is incredibly reliable. He can assist Zegras in some of the faceoffs, though Cates isn't amazing at faceoffs either, but he's like about average
Well,
getting to there.
it's interesting. I mean, like I wouldn't
He's got
mind it.
good size.
I think you'd put him on the wing, obviously, like have him be on the left wing, for example. It'd be like Zegras, Cates, Michkov. I think if you're super concerned that they're going to be terrible defensively, then maybe you could do that. I wouldn't mind it.
That's
I think it could be an effective line, but I also think that Konechny could be just as effective potentially as Cates from a defensive standpoint. If you like, I think that line's gonna have the puck so much. Like, I don't know if it would matter that much, but yeah.
yeah, no, look, that might be true. And to be honest with you, in preseason, I expect to see that line.
Well, you should be exploring every combination
Right.
possible.
But
So.
that's the time to do it, right? Where you don't care if they get beat defensively because the games don't mean anything
Well, you
beyond
can see
evaluation.
you can see how they play together, like what the chemistry's like,
Yeah.
and then let's say if they are really good defensively, or sorry, well, let's say if they are really good offensively, and you see as the coach as Tocchet, like he sees certain holes in the defensive game, he could easily say, hey, you guys have it offensively. Focus on these things for the last week of preseason. See if you can improve it. If not, I'm splitting you guys up. Like there's
Yeah.
always,
Right.
who
Like
knows how the coach is going to approach
let's
it.
be honest. The lines that they start with in the beginning of the season will not be the lines
Yeah, all these
throughout the entire
exactly.
season.
No matter what it ends up
Ideally.
being, Yeah, no matter what it ends up being to start, you're going to see a ton of different combinations all season. So I'm pretty sure we're going to see Zegras and Michkov together at some point if they do not start off together. I'm pretty sure we're going to see Couturier and Michkov together at some
Well,
point. I'm pretty sure we'll probably even see Luchanko and Michkov together if he makes
yes,
the team.
probably
So
early in preseason. I agree with you. Very much agree with that. Um, and then the thought is too, and I don't think we're going to see this because I really think that, similar to the Luchanko situation, you're invested in Zegras playing center, right? That is going to
yeah,
be
yeah.
their mindset going into it. But if you do look at it on paper, Trevor Zegras on the left wing, Sean Couturier in the middle, and Matvei Michkov on the right wing,
That
you
could be a
know,
good line
that,
too. Yeah.
that like at least playing styles and skill sets that even makes more sense than Konechny, Michkov, and Couturier. I don't think we're going to see that because I think they're going to push at the very least for the first half of the season to be like, no, we want Zegras in the middle. We want to make sure he's the center. It fills a big need for us. Having said that, again, the internet world doesn't care about Jack Nesbitt, but the Flyers very much do. So he is a consolation to being okay. If Zegras doesn't end up being a center, we have Luchanko, we have Jack Nesbitt in the system being built in their minds as top six forwards, right? So I think there is a world where we might see something like that. And again, my biggest concern with Zegras is I think he probably did get better defensively over the past couple years under Craig Cronin. But his face-off numbers are horrendous.
Yeah,
So
not great.
you would have to shelter that line, which again, maybe that's not the end of the world, though, to your point, Vasili, because they might be like, we're just going to give him every offensive zone draw to Zegras and Michkov together on a line with, whether it be TK or somebody else. Is that like, we're just going to put them in offensive positions the entire time? Because on the power play, you have to figure that Zegras, at the very least, is going to be able to power play with Michkov. My assumption is he'll play the middle, though I do see a combination. Like, ideally, if I was going to put together a power play right now for the Flyers and I put together the top unit, and again, I don't think people would agree with me on this, but Sean Couturier would be my face-off guy and my net front presence on the power play. And then I'd have Zegras and Michkov on the offhand wings. Um, and then have TK and Jamie Drysdale on the point. So, to rotate like that. Or you can swap TK with Michkov in that situation as well. But like that's my five
Yeah,
on
I
the
would
top power
probably
play unit.
I could probably agree with that. Like I would probably just the only difference is I'd probably just have like TK in the bumper, Michkov on the point.
Sure.
So yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But I just think the Flyers, like, it's an undersized unit, which doesn't necessarily mean it won't be successful.
No,
But
especially on the
I,
power play.
yeah, I
Like
just think about how bad our offense or our goaltending, or not our goaltending, I'm sorry, our presence around the goaltender on the power play has been.
yeah.
We really don't have many guys who do that well, and I really only see two guys on the team who could be good at that. Maybe Bump is a guy, but it's really just Couturier and Forrester. And again, Forrester is also a big shot guy, so I'm like, I
Yeah.
feel like there should be an effort to be like Sean Couturier play in the middle. He did have a lot of success in the bumper spot playing with Giroux, so I wonder if you have Michkov on his left side, right on the power play, Zegras on the right side, playing what we were hoping that a guy like Frost was able to do consistently, right? So I don't know. We'll see. I'm probably wrong. So I'm willing to see what the next year.
There's gonna be a lot of power play iterations though. So like to
No
your point,
doubt.
like we're gonna see so many different combos, especially
To
considering how
start the
bad the
year.
power play's been. So
Yeah. And if Luchanko's on the team and Bump, they're going to want those guys to have offensive opportunities too.
second power play.
Yeah. And again, it really matters what happens with Forrester. Like, we brought him up several times. Like his situation, like in my mind at the pro level, he is the closest thing the Flyers have to untouchable outside of Michkov. He's like the only guy that I think that they look at and they're like, we were not like he is ideally everything we want in a player at the NHL level. Size, defensive ability, offensive scoring touch, grit, ability to win around the walls, plays the PK, plays the power play, is
Big
young.
shot. Yeah.
Yeah, he kind of has it all. So he is a guy that really will be missed if he is going to miss significant time in the beginning of the year. But it will make things more interesting as far as line combinations. And then we also don't know what's going to happen with Dvorak. Like, I'm assuming he's going to be playing bottom six, but we know Tocchet really likes him. And, I used Noah Cates in that capacity on the left wing. Maybe they see Dvorak playing with Zegras and
And
Michkov,
he's
right?
and he's a lot bigger, so that could
Yeah.
offset some of the
And
size
and
scenario. But
and is also like pretty much a 20 goal scorer in the NHL, or has been. Was a
yeah,
dominant juniors player. And again, to point out the difference in production, again, he played in for the London Knights and he had 120 points or something like that playing for the London
yeah,
Knights.
yeah, he was really good in junior.
Right, but he also played on a super team. So it
That's what I
kind of
mean. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
skews the offensive production. So when I look at like Luchanko's offensive numbers, the only thing I look at is the fact that he was one of the most improved players from his draft year. Okay. Anything else you want to say there? Otherwise, we'll move into the last segment.
No, all good. We had a good convo on Michkov there.
Okay, cool. So we're going to talk about taxes. This is not going to be a long conversation.
And not like taxes, like taxing like income tax.
I mean, it is
No,
actually.
no, it is income tax, but I mean like not like boring taxes. Like I'm not talking about my taxes on here. Like we're talking
This
about
is
NHL taxes.
relative to the NHL. Yes. So I wanted to talk about this because it seems like this conversation is dying off, and I don't, and dying off online because it's the off season, and understandably so. It's not that relevant. And Gary Bettman already tried to kind of hand wave this out of the conversation. That is not going to happen. In fact, it is going to become vastly more intense as we move forward, and I'm going to show people why. So, there is a NHL calculator on Puckpedia. I am hoping that this is accurate as far as the exact numbers, but it is coming from Cardinal Point, which is a good reference for data, especially like financial data. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you guys why this is a big issue, why it wasn't as big of an issue, and why it will become a bigger issue moving forward. So I'm going to take two teams to start that obviously they are not the most affected by taxes. And typically taxes are income tax, also, cost of living, local taxes, and whatnot. And one thing you need to remember when you look at this as well, there is also a revenue sharing. So not only are these guys losing money to taxes, they
They're
also have
paying
to,
into that.
yes, they're
Yeah.
also paying into revenue sharing. So you have to realize the money that a player signs, they're taking home like 40, or I'm sorry, like 55 to 60% of it. They are not taking home 100% or even 70% because of the revenue sharing.
Well, unless you sign in Florida.
Right. So I'm going to use the example. So we'll start off with the bare minimum salary, right, which is 750. Now, if you look at 750 between the Flyers and the Islanders, obviously not a big difference. The Philadelphia actually is not one of the highest taxed cities. So when I complain about this, we're not even one of the teams who are really that affected by it as much as other teams.
Yeah.
Especially if
Show
you
the
can,
Leafs.
yes, like Canadian teams, West Coast teams,
Yeah,
there are
not good.
teams with much higher taxes. So if you look at it, not a big difference between Philadelphia and New York, a little bit of money saved. And again, this is on 750K,
I think
right?
when we get to like 8 million, 10
So
million,
that's exactly
shit
where
like
we're going.
that.
So let me show you what it would look like with a team that doesn't pay taxes, and we'll use the famous team, the Florida Panthers. So again, not a huge chunk of difference, right?
But still,
285. You're still talking about $50,000 difference between
that's a big difference for
and
me. I mean,
and exactly. And not only that, you have to remember $50,000 to somebody who's bringing in, let's say, 400K a year. That's a lot of money. And like you can joke around and be like, oh, yeah, well, they're rich anyway. These guys are not rich. They're starting their careers. And $50,000 is pays for their agent essentially for the
yeah,
year. Right. So like This is not nothing. It pays for their children's school. It pays for certain. It probably pays their whole taxes for the year, depending on where they're living.
Yeah, yeah.
Property taxes, right? I have some financial literacy. I'm not making this stuff up out of nowhere. And what gets more interesting is when you put in larger numbers. So right now, a big contract, but not a max contract, is about $10 million a year, right? So let's put in that $10 million. So now we look at the difference of that. And all of a sudden, that number jumps from being $50,000 to being substantially more, somewhere
To
about
basically basically being the whole value of like a minimum 750,000 deal
it's
almost.
more. It's 1 point. Oh no, I'm sorry. You're right. You're right. It's close to a million, but it's under a million. So let's say about 800K. But that's the Flyers, who are not so bad. So let's go to a team that has bad salary, and we'll
Let's
take
pick our
Toronto.
favorite.
So Toronto is about what? What is that? 1.2
Well,
million?
53%, like look at the tax, 53%. Like, yeah, like I mean, I live in Toronto, so I can tell you from experience that I get taxed a lot on my paycheck. So,
Right.
and I don't make anywhere close to what these guys are
And
making. So
and
you can
you
only
still
imagine what they get
and you
taxed.
still feel it, don't you?
Yeah, like I'll give you an example. Like I probably like on my paycheck, I'll probably lose $400 just the taxes alone,
Right. Okay.
which is a
Exactly.
lot, which is a
So
lot.
so right
Yeah.
now, and again, guys, remember this number is an annual number. This is not total. This is annual. So right now, what's that difference? Let's say about what 1.3 million annually. 1.3 million for one really good player. Now imagine you have three of them. How much money you can save on a contract if you're Florida. So
Well,
that team
yeah.
has to offer, we saw with Sam Bennett, that team has to offer 10, you can offer 8,
And it's
8.5.
still and the player's still taking the same home essentially.
Yes.
So like you got to think about like for Florida,
So
all these teams that are like the thing that makes it even more interesting is like you have Florida, you have Dallas, you have Vegas, for
Vegas,
example. They're
Nashville.
all well, national shit, but I'm just saying like they're all juggernauts,
For
right?
now, for
Yeah,
now.
but I'm saying this makes it easier for them to stay competitive and stay a juggernaut team because let's say your window's closing, you could potentially add a player at a much cheaper rate and then add even other players based on what's
It's
happening here,
it's
right?
a
Like it's an
it,
easier way to retain talent,
it's
essentially.
a it's a compounding benefit, right? So if you
Oh
have
yeah.
three players that should have been on the open market 10 million and you manage to sign them for 8.5, that is $4.5 million
Could spend elsewhere,
to
yeah.
bring in another player who also you get to pay less because
Yeah.
that actual money is more than the other team. So that could be a $5.5 million player
But
for another team.
it all compounds even beyond the money because now if you're that team and you're able to keep all these players and keep, your team competitive, that in general is going to attract more players because first of all, the team's better. You have even more better players. Other players see, oh, look how stacked this team is. I want to
And
join
it's
them now
also
and win a cup,
and
right?
it's
So
also every contract you have, you get a discount. You can
pretty
get a
much
discount. So at the end of the day,
compared to your rival, right?
that's
Like
yeah, that's a free all-star caliber player. I mean, if you think about it, or two really good players, that brings you over the top. And that's today's 10 million. Let's go up 2 years where that 10 million, or let's say Connor McDavid, right? And it's
yeah, yeah.
rumored that Kaprizov might get $15 million. So let's say McDavid makes 16
Yeah,
per
and then
year.
just as you're typing it in too, like to add, like you look at Florida and the Leaf example, right? Like they're rivals, they're in the same division. So, like think about the detriment for Toronto in the situation where you have a division rival literally having the ability to outbid you on players you might want to pursue due to this, or being able to add other players because they save money somewhere else. Sorry, go back to your point, Yariv.
No, that's very well said. So that's about $2.7 million difference in value because of taxes.
That's huge. Yeah.
So where Toronto, if they're competing, or let's say Edmonton, are competing for Connor McDavid, they need to pay him 16 for that value,
Oh
or
my.
he can go to a team like Florida and literally get under $14 million a year
Oh,
for
look at the 8 million.
13.3 million a year to equal the same amount of value. So
Yeah.
when you look at the open market now and you need to compete against the best player in the world and you're all offering him $16 million a year, he's again, that's 2.7 over 1 year. What is it over the max allowed term? Let's say 7 years, because that's where it is right now. That is $19 million.
That's a
That
lot
sound
of
like a
money.
small amount of money?
No, it doesn't. Like, I mean, think about it from Batman's perspective. He just wants to brush this under the rug because he doesn't want to address the elephant in the room. But
Yes.
it's clearly an issue that needs some sort of rework.
And
That's my
and
opinion.
let me argue the objection that this wasn't a problem 20 years ago. Well, when the cap was a lot lower and really the largest contract you had, or what a large contract was $6 million. That is a lot smaller of a difference.
Yeah, exactly. So players aren't going to look at that and say, "Oh, only 990,000, not a big deal for me." But
It's
19 million in this day and age, that's a big difference, man.
correct. So this is what I'm saying. It's going to become a larger issue because again, percentages of numbers that get bigger become more of a problem
Become
for the
bigger
league.
percentages and
Right.
bigger money,
So
so
when players are making 20 million a year, now that number that we threw out for
I
McDavid,
mean,
who he could get 18 million a year, then we're not talking about a $19 million
well,
difference. We're talking about a 26, $27 million
yeah, like
difference.
I think obviously now the new CBA is signed and ratified or whatever, like so it's not going to get addressed here, but
Of course not. Why
I
would
think
it?
the next one, like the next CBA after
They're not
this,
going to be able to
they're
hide from it.
yeah, exactly. Because to your point, the money's going to rise so much with the cap that's going to become an even bigger percentage, and teams are going to feel that. Like the Canadian team specifically are going to get fucked on this, but we'll see.
Yes. And you're not, and it's a lot harder to change policy of your local government or your federal government than it is to adjust your CBA
Yeah, I can.
for, and again,
Yeah.
there are solutions that could be put in
I
place
don't
like
think the federal, Canadian, or provincial governments are going to be lowering
no,
taxes
no.
anytime soon.
For
So,
hockey players, no, of course not. First of all, they want that money. So
yeah.
they're going to have to find a way to balance this out where teams are going to be able to go over the cap by a small percentage, probably somewhere around 3%, and get and pay again into additional revenue. So you'll be get penalized for it. This is one solution, the luxury tax option. I'm sure that there are smarter people than me financially that can come up with something. But any single time people tell you, like, I got beat up for that comment about that I made about Shabanov. Okay, Shabanov is coming into the NHL, into a league. Why would $50,000 for Shabanov, and again, that's just his base salary. It does not include his bonuses. So his bonuses on top of that, which again, he'll get hit with a luxury tax for that as well. So he's going to get probably taxed about 35% on the amount of money that he's making. So in total, I mean, not just income tax, but again, about a large amount of his money is going to go to taxes. He is not a multimillionaire guy. And to assume that 50,000, 75,000, $100,000 is nothing, that could be $150,000, that's a sports car. That's not like nothing for these people. And look, I'm not being arrogant. I am not a millionaire, but I have people in my life who are millionaires. And I promise you that these small percentage differences absolutely impact their life and their decision making. And I'm not talking about I know some people who make money. I'm talking about very close to me in my everyday life. They would take something this seriously. So I promise you that NHL players will too, and it will impact decision making. It's
50K
not,
is a lot, man. Like you
yes.
can buy a lot of things with 50K.
Well,
So anybody try to dismiss that,
yeah,
I don't
and
agree
look,
with
and I
that.
also understand, Bettman's argument that it's like, hey, look, some of these guys are smaller markets. This is an advantage they have of being a smaller market, right? It's
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
it's something their government put into place so they can leverage it, and all that is good. And again, the Flyers are not the most effective.
In the middle.
We're like in the middle, but even a little bit better. But we're because we're a little bit better than like Long Island. versus like Manhattan, for instance, where like the Islanders are in a little bit better of a situation than the Rangers
Yeah, yeah.
with taxes. But again, this will be a growing problem. Now, maybe their thought process is that the cap is going to be so high, it's not going to matter eventually. Some teams just won't be able to even afford to hit the minimum on a regular basis or won't even want to do that. They're not going to touch the maximum allowance. So maybe this problem will go away. But as far as getting players to compete in this like short-term bubble, it will be a problem. It is a problem already today, and only a problem in the sense that it really removes a lever of competition of offering that teams can offer the same amount of money. It's not a coincidence that Mitch Marner went to Vegas. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
he
We'll
could
see
get
what
more money.
happens.
So
And a guy like McDavid, who maybe doesn't want to stay in Edmonton, maybe he will, but Edmonton's probably going to have to offer him like 17 and a half, where, a team like Philly can offer him 15 and a half, 16, you know?
and a team
And
like Florida could he offer even less?
right, exactly.
Yeah.
So, and he make the same amount of money. So it's like he might be more tempted to go just for a competitive team in the middle, won't even want to stay home with the Oilers because of the difference, right? So it's absolutely going to affect the NHL. It already is right now. There's no way
Oh, it
around it. There's
definitely
no
is.
lying.
Look at that Bennett contract. You're telling me that, that didn't have an impact? Like the fact that Florida could pay him 8 million, but like really another team would have to pay him the 10 to match. Like it's a huge
It
impact. So
right, and like I'll say it again, as the salaries increase, it becomes more of an impact, not less.
yeah.
So it is what it is for now. I don't think it's the only thing that matters to being competitive. That's ridiculous, first
No,
of all.
no. But it's a
Um,
factor.
but it is
It's a big factor, I
it
would say.
in a land where the playing field is supposed to be leveled by the salary cap, it is no longer leveled by the salary cap. That is the truth of this. It is an issue with the salary cap because the salary cap is supposed to create an even playing field across the board, and it is not
Well, this
creating
is
an even
almost like a
playing field.
loophole if you're a team that's in a state with the no income tax. It's basically
Well,
like a tax loophole for you.
Well, yes. Okay. This exists in the regular job market. If you go get
Yeah,
a
of
job
course.
in Manhattan versus a job in Philly, you're going to make more money in a job in Manhattan. The difference is they don't have a cap on spending. Like the government isn't going, oh, you can't pay somebody more than
Yeah,
150K
yeah,
a year.
exactly.
They can be like, okay, I'll pay him 180, where that is a more competitive salary than you're going to get in Philly at 130, 140, right? For
Yeah,
the
yeah.
cost of living difference and the taxes difference, right? There's ways around that. In the NHL, it doesn't exist. The only thing that really exists is like, I guess there are cost of living differences. So like some of it is like negligible, to some degree because it costs less to live in certain areas. So like you can make some case, but again, as the numbers get larger, so do the salaries. And when you're talking about $20 million difference over 7 years, that's a huge number. Like that,
Yeah, you can do a
especially
lot with
NHL.
that.
That
So,
yeah, talk about NHL. Those are big numbers for NHL players. And I don't know about you, but I think $1 million is a lot of money. So
dude, I think
yeah,
$10,000 is a lot of money.
right.
So,
So
yeah.
imagine what an NHL player feels like about it. And again,
Exactly.
they have revenue share too. So that 20 million that McDavid wouldn't get, that's his revenue. That's his entire revenue share over 7 years, something like that, right? So it's like, it definitely is going to sway their decision making, and we'll see. Maybe we're wrong, but I have a feeling that next offseason, and I think the Flyers are in a position to benefit from it. I'll make it clear because we're a highly competitive
Well,
market without the
yeah.
highest taxes.
I think a lot of these teams, like who are in this position next offseason, are going to continue to benefit as the cap rises. But then, as we kind of see them gain the advantage, the next CBA will try to close this out, or maybe they'll have some sort of emergency ratification of the CBA because so many teams are complaining. We'll have to see, but it's interesting. I think as the
Maybe.
cap rises, there's more percentage to it. So
Yeah. So we'll see. But I did that little, I already knew this stuff in my head. But when I found that calculator, I was like, oh, I can make this real for people. So we're not just talking in generalities. So people could actually see the numbers broken out in front
yeah,
of
yeah.
them. and
It
how
makes
how
it
much
easier
of
to visualize it when you see it like that in
yes.
front of you.
Yeah,
So
so I wanted to bring it up again just so people are informed. There's nothing we can do about it. And again, the Flyers kind of benefit from this, to be honest with you. They're not a no income tax, but they're not a high cost of living
there's a
city.
lot of other teams that
Though
are
New
higher income
Jersey
tax.
has high property taxes, but players don't have to live in New Jersey. They choose to live in New Jersey because they have better school systems in New Jersey. And then you can live in the outside Philly areas, which have higher taxes as well. But look, this is an adult thing. I am not like perfect in finances, but I am financially literate. I'm pretty good with my own finances, and this is not a knock on Americans, but the average American has a lot of debt and is not good and has a lot of credit card debt, and they don't know how to deal with the small percentages difference and interest and all that. A lot of people don't fully understand this stuff, and I'm not talking about people who listen to the show, or I'm not trying to put anybody down, but I can see how some of this would go over people's heads and not really understand the difference. So when you see large numbers like that put in front of you, it becomes a lot more evident. But like I've been
Yeah.
talking about this issue for like 5, 6 years as I saw the salaries go up. So now it's kind of like, okay, well, it's becoming more and more real and more of an impact. And I could see Nashville getting themselves out of their issues quicker than
Yeah,
another team.
it's definitely something interesting to bring up. So thanks, Yariv.
Yeah. All right, that's it for us. Anything you want to add?
No, just I mean, we're gonna have episodes throughout the summer, so
Yeah.
continue to listen in, and we'll be here to, bring you these interesting topics like the tax TED Talk here.
Yeah. Yeah, tax TED Talk. I like that. Yeah, we'll try to get Steve back on here sometime in September.
Probably early September. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, something like that. To talk about the upcoming season. Maybe give a preview of the draft too. We'll do all kinds of fun stuff. But we're entering the dead period, and Vasili is going on his honeymoon mid-August. So I'll probably be doing those episodes by myself, but um, we'll see. We'll see if I'll figure something else out. But I don't care. I like talking to the mic by myself, so I don't mind it. Okay. Just want to remind everybody, please like and subscribe. Hit the notification bell for notification. Get notified when we release these episodes because they come out random times, sometimes either Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. Also, for the audio version, go to Spotify and iTunes. Give us a rating and a follow. If you guys have not done that so far, listening to this podcast, please do so. It's the best way to support us, and we really, really appreciate it. We track that stuff. That is what keeps us going. So, thank you all so much for those who have done it. If you have not done it, please do so now. Also, shout out to our sponsor, Jim Steaks at 4th and South. Make sure to go get yourself a cheesesteak from Jim's. They have one of the best, if not the best, cheesesteak in Philadelphia. Shout out to Public Summit Adjusters, 215-752-0560. Go to them for your insurance adjustment needs. They will help facilitate the process between you and your insurance company. Make sure you get the best claim possible. And shout out to SportsSpider.com. They are our partners. They aggregate sports content from all over the internet, podcasts, articles, videos, everything. And our stuff is pinned at the top. The link to SportsSpider.com is in the description of the audio and video versions of this podcast. And obviously, you can find them using SportsSpider.com. All right. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Thank you, Vasili, for being awesome as always. We love you guys. And remember, always stay